Hi, everyone. This is Victor Lund. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm very excited to have some really great hosts or really great people on today's webinar. We have Christian Dwiggins and his brother James. They're doing some really great stuff. So we're going to get started right here at the top of the hour. If you're having any problem hearing me, you should be able to hear me and see me now. Let me know. And also, during today's webinar, if you have any questions for our guests, please put them in the chat and I'll probably answer them at the end, but if there's something that pops up in the chat that I think is, highly material and relevant to where we're at in the flow of the meeting today, we'll stop and we'll take that question. So, by all means, let's get going. So it's 4:00. I'm Victor Lund. Again, I'm the CEO of the Wave Group. James, maybe you want to mute for a minute. Today's webinar is really about introducing you guys to a company that we invested in personally. We believe that what these guys are putting together is something that's vital for our industry. You're going to learn a lot about it today. It's a business that is in many ways industry owned. Our investment's fairly minor, but they've received investment from a lot of our clients, both brokerage clients and MLS clients. So we kind of feel like we're part of the family. So with that, I just want to bring up Christian and James to just give a little background on who they are. Christian, you're probably the least well known, so maybe I'll have you go first. Right, both of these guys, just so you know, Marilyn and I live in San Luis Obispo County. These guys grew up in San Luis Obispo County. The Dwiggins family is such an important part of our community. And it's really great to see, from a small town, so much great real estate expertise come out of there. Christian, your world to get into real estate was not a very direct path. So welcome. Let's let people know who you are, because you're kind of running the show over there.
So I thought I would stay in San Luis Obispo and tried a year at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo studying materials engineering, and then decided I needed to get as far away as possible. So I left San Luis Obispo and joined the Marine Corps. I was a Marine for 8 years, got out of the Marine Corps, and then went into entertainment. So I've been working in entertainment, film and television and music and producing, and focused a lot on electronic music for a long time. I ran my own studio, built up a pretty great repertoire. I even won a Grammy, which did zero for my career, if I was to be honest. But it was fun nonetheless. And then decided I wanted to pivot and do something a little bit more challenging. So I got into business operations and ran a couple of businesses. I found my way into technology, and then went and picked up some certifications in product management and became a product owner, ran a SaaS company, took that through acquisition, and then left that company, took pause. James and I started talking about Rayse. My best friend who runs a real estate team in Beverly Hills, who may or may not be on one of those shows, needed help scaling his company, his team. And so I worked there for a year, which was a really, really amazing proving ground for learning all of the weird intricacies of real estate and how, mega teams operate. We were a team of 60 agents with the highest lead flow from Flex and moving into multiple markets. And it really set me up to understand how quirky this industry is. And I tried to do my best to stay out and eject myself as far away from real estate as possible, but James sucked me back in. And finally, I left that team, and James and I stood up Rayse, the agent value platform, and we set ourselves on a mission to solve this giant misconception between what consumers think agents do and what they actually do. And so that's the big fight.
Yeah, it's interesting, but my partner Marilyn has done tons and tons and tons of 20 years of consumer research. And, one of the things that that she recently tried to understand, I think this is data that you guys have access to, but yeah, the difference between what a consumer thinks their real estate agent is doing every day and what they actually do every day is so many miles apart. And yeah, I'm really intrigued by the endeavor that you guys have have kicked off here. And I'm not surprised that, your brother wasn't, it took him this long really to compel you back into this industry. But I mean,
I'm
you
a
guys,
shitty
you guys had a
recruiter.
lot of land
Yeah.
in San Luis Obispo. You probably could have just stayed there and lived on the ranch, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
James told you our grandfather was one of like the early founding family
Yeah,
members of that area. Yeah.
yeah. It's crazy.
well,
So
I have a
it
photo,
took you a
Victor.
long
It's
time to
actually,
suck them in.
yeah, like I said, I'm not a very good recruiter. But I have a photo I found of our grandfather when he opened up Poland Truck and Real Estate in 1967, and he had office in Aurora Grande, San Luis Obispo, and Paso Robles. So at the time, he had the largest real estate company in the Central Coast back in the 67 through the 70s. So,
Amazing.
anyways, yeah, yeah.
No, I love it. So James, like what was your real estate path? Because you've
I've
iterated
been
through.
in it my whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I worked for my parents' company for a while when they were so both grandparents were brokers. Both of our parents were brokers. I worked for their small independent company in the early part of my career, and then I went and went off into tech. Started and sold two different prop tech companies, both in '98, and then started another one and sold that, and then started another one in 2001, sold that in 2006. Then I went to work in Northern California, moved to San Francisco, and then I went to work for a very large regional franchise called Realty World. It had about 400 offices across the Bay Area. And then I basically worked my way up, became the vice president, and then eventually bought that with my business partner, Tay, when we started Next Home at the same time. So we were running Realty World with 400 offices, and then we started Next Home, which now has about 630 offices across the US. So I've sat in the real estate office chair, what agents do. I've worked in the tech side of it and then on the franchise side. And then, now we're back into prop tech again as another business. I'm not running day to day. Christian is with a different team, but certainly I've been very heavily involved in the direction of the company and its vision and strategy of where we are. And I think most people know who I am at this point. I'm not exactly shy on opinions. So, I've been very vocal for some time about both the lawsuits over the past few years to begin with, and just helping everyone realize that there's a lot of change happening in our business, Victor, as you are well aware. And you know, we've had some changes from the impact of litigation, and certainly there's some changes that haven't been made. A lot of people are trying to fight these changes and hold on to the past, but I will say that I think that everyone needs to understand that that is the first inning of many different things that will likely come from a litigation standpoint. But also, there are lots of other outside forces coming into our space that want to significantly change the way this business operates. And if anyone was paying any attention to the recent acquisition of Redfin by Rocket, their investor deck was incredibly clear about what their intentions are. They want to take the average real estate transaction cost of roughly $40,000 for an average price home in the United States, and they want to cut it in half. And I can tell you exactly where that's coming. That is going to be hitting the real estate agent's commission as a loss leader. They'll bundle services so that they can reduce that cost if you're doing mortgage, title, escrow, home warranty, insurance. And if agents ever thought things were going to be normal, they are being naive to beyond any degree humanly possible, because this is the first movement now of really for as close as possible to a lender getting into the space. Rocket can do this because they're not a bank, and they just acquired W-2 based employees. And if you look at the RESPA carve outs, you can bundle services when you're an employee. So there's a very interesting play that's going to be coming into our space. And I'll leave you with this: is the every consumer study every single consumer study shows that consumers are willing to pay a premium for convenience and service, and if they can see value. So it doesn't mean just because Rocket's going to come into the space and they're going to be like, well, we're going to do real estate transactions for almost nothing, that it's going to remove the agent. But there's no scenario where a consumer will pay that premium if they don't find value, service, and convenience in that offering. And so what you'll hear us talk about today, and I'm sure Victor will ask lots of questions around, is there is this: what Rayse is doing, whether it's Rayse or a competitor, you will all be doing it. It's simply a matter of when, not if, because
Yeah.
all these companies are starting to move into this transparent client experience. And so, agents that aren't providing this type of experience will not be here. That is a fact because you
I
look
agree
at
with
exactly
that.
what Zillow's doing, what Redfin's doing, what Rocket's about to do. It is a completely seamless transaction, transparent transaction that consumers are involved in. So, yeah,
Yeah. Um, love to arm wrestle you on that a little bit, but just kind of reeling back, one of the things that really attracted me to Ray's, not only is it, because of our friendship and the years that you've been in the industry and your knowledge, awareness, and experience of what the industry needs, but I just kind of, made it pretty personal and said, boy, when you sit down with a listing agent to find out what kind of value they're going to bring in the service they provide, there's, a pretty significant list of deliverables on what they're going to do. And those deliverables, aren't really a lot of hand waving and assumptions. And it's very
they're
specific.
tangible.
I'm going to do this, and here's the checklist. I'm going to let you know when it gets done. I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to give you seller reports. I'm going to stay engaged. You're going to be part of this journey with us, and I'm going to be the person that's your scout to kind of move you through it. And, I think when you get into the negotiation and the closing part, the role of the listing agent is equally as important. And certainly during the closing process, there's another checklist, but that negotiation part is, fairly opaque, I guess. But just there's not a lot of design through it. I've often, believed that offer management is a super important part of the listing agent's role. And I'm frankly a little surprised that more of that hasn't been adopted by the real estate industry. But in any case, when you look over to the buy side, it's just a bunch of flailing arms. And I think a lot of people think, a lot of people really haven't transitioned to the knowledge and awareness of what the modern real estate buyer's agent's doing. And now that you have to articulate that value and really do a buyer's representation presentation in order to get that agreement signed, like you need to be able to show the same kind of tangible things that you're doing as a professional, much in the same way that listing broker or listing agent did, right?
Agreed.
That
Yeah.
was that was what really charged me up and got me going. I mean, you were certainly way early on in this. I mean, you guys started maybe a year and a half before the settlement. Is that about right? Timeline?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then so there must have been some kind of apex, some kind of moment, like when you said, this isn't for my real estate business. This is for my real estate industry. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, Christian and I, so in fairness, we've this idea between our co-founders, we have a third co-founder as well, Christine, who was part of this originally, but and still is. But we've been talking about Rayse ironically since almost 2010. And it originated from Christine actually doing a transaction and then a seller questioning her compensation and why she was being paid so much. She was really, really frustrated. She's like, I put so much time into this. And she didn't have a really good way of articulating value. So the idea, just for, I'm going to go way back, it originated from me, and everybody who knows me knows I'm not a fan of lawyers. So, but lawyers send a bill every month and they, you get this $10,000 bill or $20,000 bill and you're like, what the hell is this? But there's a really good point in this. The bill summarizes everything that happened because psychologically we forget about everything that happened the week before. That's how every human being is. And so I was looking at that going, why aren't we doing something similar? I'm not suggesting hourly, to be clear. I'm just suggesting the transparency of all the work that has occurred to remind somebody about what has been going on. That was a long time ago. But when the lawsuit started happening, I was candidly one of the few people that was like, this is going to go horribly wrong. And it's not going to end the way everybody says it's going to end. We're going to lose this, not that I wanted to. And then the outcome of it is eventually, I thought it would happen faster, but decoupling of compensation would occur. And it is, it's just slowly happening in some degrees. People are fighting it. But to your point, agents have been, I say this lovingly towards my industry, but buyer's agents have had an easy ride. because the model was structured in such a way that the seller was always compensating the buyer's agent, and they didn't have to sit down and do a buyer consult with a buyer, and you didn't have to sit down and articulate your value. And you're like, oh, don't worry about it. The seller's going to pay my fee. That's a shitty business to way to operate. Like you can't sit there and just all of a sudden think the world's just going to be that way forever. And here we are. And now we're having to articulate that value. And Victor, a comment you made that I think is super important. The ironic part about the statements you were making about how people aren't questioning listing agents because they have all these tangible things. The funny part about it is buyer's agents actually do more work.
I know, I'm aware. Yeah,
They
it's,
actually do
I've
way
always
more
felt the
work than a
same
listing
way.
agent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you know, we've
And
seen this fluctuation in commission too. Like, you know, California has probably seen more of it, but you know, like we have clients that are on the East Coast and they're operating in price points or markets where price points are under 350,000, and they don't, you know, the industry talks a lot about you know, 6% of commission being split as the historical benchmark, but they charge 7 or 8% as, you know, to do that job and still split it, or in California 5 or 4 depending on the price point, right? So commissions have always been
wait, so you're saying there
negotiated.
wasn't a standard?
That commissions have always been negotiable. In fact,
That was
one
a
of the
joke.
things that I
Yeah.
used to get, you know, I was pissed about and still am,
Uh,
is that, you know, had anybody taken the time to go look at the commission net sheet, they would see evidentially
mhm.
exactly that the commission, because you'd go to the closing table and
It's
something that
all
came
sorts of
up in the
concessions.
appraisal or something that came up in the
Mhm.
inspection throws a wrench into your deal, and 2 real estate agents across the table look at each other and say, we'll split it in our commission, take care of it, let's close now. If you look
Yeah,
at what was offered in the MLS versus what closed, those numbers are almost always different.
always different.
Have been
Mhm.
forever, and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
just it's still a press point that annoys me a little bit, that we never really had an opportunity, you know, under what's called the role of reason type of argument with antitrust to really explain what's actually happening. You know, they did the per se, and it's like, are these two competitors collaborating? Yes, they are. Well, we don't need to hear any more evidence. Like, they got it
Speaking of
wrong.
collaborating, Judge Boo and Michael Ketchmark, I mean, go down that road, but that's not this webinar. So
Oh, I
yeah.
know, but it's important to understand. So I think one of the things that Ray's brought to the forefront, and Christian, you're going to be showing the product here in a little bit, but so I want everybody to know, like, you're going to see what it is that we're talking about, and you're going to understand the vision that they had and what they're doing. But you
I
guys saw
wanted
this.
to I
Go
wanted
ahead.
to tack on to your,
Yeah.
I thought you were, when you were going to talk about the net sheet, you were actually going to go to what net the agents actually take home. And there was an interesting thing that we did in our first closing reports, which was to show not the gross commission, but show the waterfall of what agents actually take home, which nobody, including the agents in the prototype mode that we put this in front of, realized what agents actually make. And a lot of this discussion and a lot of this misconception on the consumer side comes from, well, my friends on Million Dollar Listing, but also comes from the fact that everybody's focused on a gross commission, but they don't understand that these are all independent agents. And the big kicker are the ones that consumers have navigated through some sort of flex program or some portal program. And consumers are like, yay, it's a free portal. I get to learn all of the things and I become a real estate agent by just navigating, Zillow. They don't realize that somebody has to pay for that portal, and it's the agent. And the agent took 30 or 40% cut on that gross commission before it even got down to their IC, operational expenses, their broker cut, the rest of it. The net is never talked about. And everybody's focused up on the gross side, and it's troublesome. I get to focus on the agent, by the way. So every time I talk, I'm going to be talking about the plight of the agent. And I get to do that because James is from the brokerage network, and that's really the great power play that James and I get to play out.
Yeah, I mean, I just you know, from the get-go, when you guys showed Marilyn and I what you were doing, I was an instant supporter, just because I recognized that the buy side really hadn't received the kind of software it needed in order to, you know, provide a buyer presentation, a buyer listing presentation, whatever you want to call it, but like a buyer presentation that was the same as a listing presentation. So there's the sort of the presentation component, but then there's the actual tracking of the deliverables. And you guys are sort of solving for both of them. And I do think that obviously the litigation was a catalyst that positions Rayse well to be adopted universally across our industry. That's why a lot of
Of
MLSs have
course.
invested. That's why they're making it available system-wide to all their agents, because it's fundamental to what you need to do as a buyer's agent. The other part that really happened most recently, which I didn't see coming, was Compass launching a product called Compass One. It's different, in terms of the way that it operates. It's not a Rayse copy, and Rayse obviously wasn't influenced at all by the development they did. But it shows, I mean, if Compass is in your market and they're recruiting agents using tools like Compass One as a benefit to agents, that it's not only going to help them secure more business, but also take, the activities of a buyer's agent from opaque to transparent. You're going to have a tough time competing. Like, I think there's going to be strong demand for
Yeah.
brokerages to be able to recruit and retain agents with comparable technology, and you can't be left behind. So do you guys see that
James,
as a catalyst at all?
well, James said it earlier in this chat. He said that it isn't about if, it's about when. And so when you look at the market trends and you see the consumer trends and the industry trends, they're all pointing in the same direction. The only reason that these lawsuits happen is because consumers aren't happy. And when they jump up and down and they get upset about they're not getting their fair shake, or they're being heard, then lawyers get involved, and then litigations happen, and then somebody's hand is forced, and then laws change. So consumers weren't happy for a long time, but now you see the industry reacting, and you're going to see a Compass One. You're going to see Real launching their consumer-facing app. You're going to see everybody trending in this transparency, even though we put that stake in the ground firmly years ago. But you're going to see that trend. So James, when he says it's not if, when, it's because everybody's moving in this direction. Is that transparency is going to be the new black. And so that's where Rayse really shines.
I think there's also a difference too. I'll add on to that, Victor, is where the products differ is in the strategy of Rayse's entire business is focused on helping the agents articulate value. So there's a transparency component of some of these products. And to be clear, Compass One's a great product. I've seen it. But it doesn't do what we're actually doing. We're building something around how to position the agent when they first meet a client, to articulate value, to garner the rate that they feel they're worth, so that the client's not questioning what it is that they do. They're going, I had no idea there was this much work in the process. And we'll show this in just a few minutes. Then there's the transparent part, where you're basically giving the client an update of everything that's happening, but not just the transaction. It's everything from every showing the agent does to the time in which they hand them the keys. And we do that through a lot of automation as well. And then the other key component, which I think is, again, another differentiator, is we have a closing report. So it's an itemized statement of everything that the agent has done over the course of that time. And there's two important parts of that. It reiterates to the client why you paid me what you paid me. But then the agents are taking that closing report on their next buyer consult and saying, here's the recent closing report I did with a previous client. Here's the work that's involved in the transaction. So we really position ourselves, it's about agent value. Like, that's really what the focus of the business is. And you'll see more and more of that. And then I'll show you a sneak peek at what we're about to launch very quickly here, is how we're integrating sort of the entire experience together. So we're bringing in all the ancillary partners of the transaction into the experience. So I'll show you some things that we're going to be doing in the next few months. And so it is a very interesting time on where we are. I think the catch to this, Victor, is you're to the point to kind of put a pin in this part of the conversation. Your agents, it's kind of like when people talk about AI, is it going to replace the realtor? No, it's not. Like, stop. Okay. Like, people need some type of human connection to go through this stuff. But AI empowered agents, the ones that are using AI to like really make their job more efficient, provide more information, give clients more updates on a more real-time basis, those things are going to beat out agents that aren't. We view it the same way. Agents that are Rayse empowered or something similar are going to have a much stronger value proposition than people that are traditionally trying to sit down and explain things without tangible evidence and analytics to show what's involved in the process. And I think 100% we are moving in that direction quickly. And those 2 points I'll add, and we'll, just to kind of summarize that, you only have to look at Zillow's super app to see how they're trying to create this experience from every aspect of the transaction in one portal. They're spending so much money to pull that off. You've got Rocket now showing the same thing in their investor deck. Rayse has obviously already done much of this and is now making that down to a local level with the individual agents. So we're moving very quickly into a new phase of how real estate will be transacted.
Well, let's look at it. We've talked here for a little bit about you guys and your backgrounds and the why, like why you believe this is important. Let's show people what it is, and then I'd like to turn off the screen and go back into conversation, answer questions that people have, and then I want to pick up the conversation, because I really don't think you can really understand how the ideas that we've talked about so far really translate into the product without experiencing the product. So let's take a look. I don't know who's driving, but
I'm going to drive it real fast because I've done this 100,000 times now. So I'll do this quickly. Yeah, he built it, and he's also tired of doing the demos, so I'll do it for him and give him a break. The product, first of all, because of this is the broker side, is designed to be a completely white labeled product. That was an important part of the entire transaction. So it's how do we make sure that the broker has their look and feel to the system, but then also giving enough flexibility for the agent to modify stuff. So we're in the beginning here on this activities page. This is an example of automation that's been built into the system. So the agent will install an app on their phone, and it's the same type of technology you're using with Uber or Google Maps or whatever. We can see where you are. One of the things that you'll enter in the system is your home address and your office address. So we have starting and endpoints for locations. As you're doing things through your day, when you show up to a property that is listed on the MLS, we can see through your latitude and longitude that you just showed up to an appointment. We can also look at your calendar and see what these things are as well. And we'll serve up that listing instantly into this activities page and say, hey, we just noticed that you were at 1844 Elmdale Avenue. And from here, the agent can assign it to an individual client very quickly in the process. So they hit assign, and that actually just got assigned to an individual buyer that they're working with. This is not a CRM, Victor. The part everybody needs to understand. This is Rayse is designed to work with an active buyer that's working with an active agent. It's not prospects. It's people that are basically sitting down, signing a buyer rep, and are going to be looking at homes. So we add in only people that are active buyers. Pretty simple process: first name, last name, email, mobile, start date, and then you pick the standard journey, the 190 things the agent's going to do over the course of 60 days. They pick their default template and go.
Can I stop you right there?
Yeah.
Because I think if you can just go back a little bit about the journeys. So this is a really important part. I want to make it crystal clear. You have loaded default journeys because these are things that real estate agents commonly do in the process of representing a buyer. But I want to make sure that every broker on the call knows that you can take these journeys, you can edit them, you can start from scratch, you can do whatever you want to do to make this journey personify what you as a brand and what your agents are doing and the tools that you are using to pay off this value to the customer.
Correct. So we will enter in, we have what we call the gold standard of what a journey should look like based upon a national real estate transaction. So we're going to start by giving that to the broker. The broker can then come in and set up, and they could be 5 of them. One for single family, one for condo, one for duplex, whatever it is. This is an example of what a standard journey looks like. These are all the things
that occur. 5 a limit, or you can put in as many as you want.
You can do as many as you want. Yeah. So the broker sets the standard. That is the install. As an example, agents can do their own path if their broker hasn't signed up, just for clarity. But once the system's in, the broker can also set minimums. They can go, these are the 75 things that every agent in my company must do as a minimum standard. So one of the things I like to point out is our industry's been talking about professionalism since I've been born. And we now have a way a broker can go, everybody follows a standard process at a minimum. Agents can't remove the minimums. They can only add on top. So they can customize it. But inside of this, every single one of these things, if I wanted to add something underneath this particular section, I can create the outcome name, the description, and hit save, and it will do it. I can do this under every section of the journey, and then the agent can save their own template. So they never have to touch them again. They just grab it and then they go. So that customization is already built into the platform for both the agents and the brokerages.
Would you
that are
mind
signing
taking,
up.
I know we're going a little deeper here, maybe than you want to go, but I was very impressed by the things that are preloaded. Can we walk through the
Yeah.
things on the console? Like, can you just, some people may not be able to read it. They may just be on their phone or whatever, but just go through, you know, a few of these and read them
I'll
out
just do the
loud.
first
Talk
one
about why
because
they're
they'll
important.
get.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we call 4 steps of the process. This is relevant to the product. You'll see as well on the presentation, but we have it called the 4 steps. You've got consultation, touring houses and writing offers, then you're in contract, and then you're in closing. Underneath each one of these is what we kind of call the gold standard. I'll just use consultation for an example. But so you've got home requirements. Obviously, you're reviewing the presentation, you're introducing them to it. You've got your neighborhood and home requirements. This is where you're putting, they want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Some stuff is required. We need that data for the system to operate. Everything else that doesn't have a star is not required. So client commitment contract. So if you've got like a VIP program, you're going to explain agency, all of these things you check off and go. And by the way, Victor, just to be clear on how easy this is, so everybody understands, as I'm doing things, all I'm going to do is just check this stuff off.
Mhm.
That's it. I just go, that's done, that's done, that's done, and the agent's done. And that instantly, which I'll show in a minute, updates the buyer in their app so they can see what's actually progressing. It literally, just because we track this, the agent will spend 1 minute a day. They log in, they check off the things that they did with their client. They come here to activities that we've automatically grabbed. They either delete them if it's not relevant, so you can delete this, or you assign it to a journey, and that's it. There's nothing else to it. So it's a very easy process. There's more automation here, but the idea is we don't want the agent spending any time in here. It's just very quick things to update the client on where things are. So
So I want to comment one thing about current state and future state. Current state, the agent has to do things. So if I sign a buyer representation agreement, I need to come in and click the box that it's done. So for brokers on the
correct.
call, one of the things that you want to be sure to negotiate in your agreements with your vendors is API access to other tools and services that you use in your business, and specifically event notifications. And if you don't put them in your contract, you'll never get them. So you need to put it into your agreement, even if you don't use them. Go ahead and put it in your agreement, imagining that someday you'll want to use them, whether it's with this application or another application. When an agent signs a buyer representation agreement, it could automatically create this account within Rayse for that customer right off the buyer representation agreement. And then click it as done. And furthermore, with any application that you're operating in your business that falls under consultation or falls under touring or contract or closing, all of those things can be updated electronically and automatically if you get these vendors to begin requiring these. If you require them of your vendor. Have you done any of that?
Yeah.
At your company? Do you have any notification integrations done which are automatically clicking boxes in here?
So currently today, the way the application works is we're looking at your location so that we can see when you've integrated, when you've shown a property, we can look at calendar, we can see when you're going to like Starbucks and things. The integration of, like, for instance, I'll just use transaction management is the part we're working on now. So that if you wanted to integrate Sky Slope, I'm making that up, and you've got, step 3, which is the contract, as you're updating things in Sky Slope, it updates that. Just for clarity, so everybody understands, the Rayse application already allows team members into the system. So that's functionality that was already built. So from here, you can invite people into the journey. So that could be a transaction coordinator, a marketing person, or another team member in the system. We've developed this thing to be so simple that all I'm doing here is essentially that automation piece is checking boxes. It removes 30 seconds worth of work. It's important. We get it. And we are working towards that with all of these APIs. That's really what this thing will end up being long term, is this massive API layer of all these different components. But it doesn't The ironic part is the agents that are using this are telling us it's not going to create that much of an uplift benefit because the amount of work that's involved now is so minimal. It just doesn't have a lot to it. So,
Yeah,
um,
well, I
but
just,
yes,
I love it,
but
but
yes is the answer. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
triggered events and automatic updates and automatic notifications. Those types of things are going to become very vital to our industry. So
Of
be sure
course.
to start
Yeah.
working that into your agreements. Otherwise, you'll never get it, and you'll always have to do manually what software can do on its own.
So I'll do this next just to give you context. We talked about this. One of the real benefits around Rayse is this presentation. So there's the app experience, and I'll show you that in a second. But there's this buyer presentation that Christian spent a lot of time on. I want to give him credit on this because he did spend a lot of time with consumers. So the way this works is you come in here and you choose buyer presentation. You pick your client that you're going to be doing the presentation for. And what you'll notice here is there's this we call presentation data. And this is essentially the last information we have on a deal that you just did. So your last success story. So it'll auto-populate with the last transaction. This is all part of the storytelling of how you are going to present to a buyer. So bedrooms, bathrooms, the number of houses that you toured, offers made, days total, how many family members you're in your house. You'll see why that's important. And then we also use market averages. So this is essentially the averages that's calculated across the platform. So right now, an average client's touring 18 houses. They're writing 3 contracts. Takes 28 days to get into contract, 20 days to close. This is a demo, Victor. You get the idea, though. And then your professional experience. You hit launch presentation, and what it does is it loads up this really beautiful buyer presentation. This is very unique in the business. What's really clever about this is that it's designed in what we call cards. And the cards are designed to allow you to stay at a high level with the buyers you're talking to them, or you can go as deep into the presentation as you want. So as I'm going back here, this first one, my value explained, I'm going to show you this. Remember I showed you step 1, which is consultation towards an offer, step 1 and 2. That's this card. Step 3 and 4 is contract and closing, what it's like to work with a Rayse empowered agent, and then your advocate in action. So as you go deeper into what we call level 2, we start to do a little bit more storytelling. So my value explained. People think that just we open doors and write contracts. 5% of the process is actually finding the home. It's really about navigating 100% of it. Every card allows you to go into this level 2 detail where we'll bring forward information that you can see essentially how much work is involved in this particular process. So again, we pull that forward to tell the buyer, this is going to take us roughly 28 days. There's 400 outcomes we have to do, et cetera. So it's dynamic. And the same thing with steps 3 and 4. Now you can go to level 3, which is where it gets really fun. You click in here, and then what it does is it pulls up a whole story. So 3 things you shouldn't do without experts: skydive, brain surgery, and then buy a house. Why? Because you can't return it, right, without an agent. So this is an important part of the storytelling. So Jane, you don't know what you don't know. We bring in all the questions that you're going to have along the way, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. This is my job, is to help you through all of this and advocate on your
Can I stop
behalf.
you there for 1 second?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, obviously, all of this is customizable to each deployment, right? So the cards can be updated and things like that. But in terms of these types of things, I know a lot of brokers on the call have home services relationships, so they can really inspire the agent to communicate those values of the brokerage and the options that are available to them along the way here.
When you say service, you mean home service, you mean ancillary
Yeah,
services? Wasn't quite
yeah,
following you on what you meant
ancillary
by that.
services. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually going to show you that in the app in
Oh,
just a
awesome.
second.
Okay,
So you'll be able to
thanks.
see what we're doing. Yeah, you're jumping, you're actually leading me into what I'm going to show you in the prototype that's about to come out. Um, so the agent, it gets to explain what I'm here for. We bring forward the last success story. And remember, the way this thing was designed was actually designed to do storytelling with the buyer. So you're doing a live consult with them, which you and I talked about earlier. So here's my last success story on what's actually happened. And then I love this part too. Craziest story I've ever experienced in a real estate transaction. Allows an agent to talk about the crazy parts of our job, which they don't ever get to do. And then we go to the next step. And this is where it really gets detailed. So there's the 496 things that I need to do to get you to an accepted offer. That number varies based upon the number of houses that an agent's likely to show before they get into contract. That's where this number comes from. So from here, we pull forward a lot of the things that they're going to be doing over the course of this part of the transaction. And then it goes directly into this animated experience. So what your path to home ownership looks like in through this experience. And this is the important part. The step 1 consultation, we lay out the 4 milestones and the 16 outcomes that need to be done, these individual pieces that you're seeing here, just to go back, that is the same thing you're looking at here. So you're seeing home requirements, client commitment contract. Those are all of these things built in dynamically. So Victor, as you made the comment earlier, if an agent has a custom path, that custom path will be laid out in the actual presentation itself. So you can get extremely granular about the work that's involved in every step of this particular transaction. 2 milestones, 15 outcomes is actually per potential house. That's the thing agents don't remember. And so the buyers are notorious for this. Everything you showed them a week ago, they forget about. But every house that you showed, you had to drive there, do the consult, go through the property, call the listing agent, receive the disclosure, go through the disclosure, send the email, and all that stuff adds up into time and space and energy. So we go deeper in that. We talk about what it's like to work with Rayse. This is the app experience. I'll go a little more into that in a second. But we show every house that they're going to be seen in person. We call it evaluating. Any homes you've written offers on, every house you've rejected, and all of that adds up into time and effort that we want to make sure the buyer continues to see that cumulative effort that the agent has done. The point I want to make here, Victor, you're emphasizing and articulating value on your fee in the beginning. You're reinforcing that value and fee throughout the entire transaction, and then you're doing it again at the end of the transaction through the closing report. So again, we pull that forward. Final 2 steps of the presentation. Let's get it closed out. So again, the same process here under contract, the work that's involved. Here's the milestones and outcomes that need to be accomplished to make that work. Same thing with individual closing, 4 milestones, 13 outcomes. And then the final piece is this. And this is where we really push hard into this experience.
Yeah, everybody sit
So-
down. If you're not sitting down right now and you see how much time an agent spends on a trade, you're going to be shocked.
Yeah, this is the part where we really emphasize this whole experience. We go what it's like to work with a Rayse empowered agent. You'll notice that there's a lot of work here. This is all dynamic around the agent. We pull their photo forward, etc. But from here, we get to talk about what this experience is like with us versus working with, a traditional agent in the process. So transparency, accountability, total peace of mind. We keep you in the know. We give you clarity throughout the process of a transaction, which is typically chaotic. Your journey captured into a closing report. And this is the digital experience of it. So we pull every single detail into this particular piece, including hours. If you want that, you have the ability to see how many activities have occurred. We even track mileage. We're not showing that today, but we actually have the total miles driven. So we're tracking everything the agent's doing, which is obviously cost and time is money. And then from here, we end it with who we are as an individual. And then in the system, you can scroll down and hit get started. And that literally sends an invite right there to the buyer when you're in person with them, allows them to click a link, set up a password, and they immediately install Rayse, and now they're connected to the agent. So it's this seamless experience from presentation to building out the app. I'll show you this one piece and then I'll stop for questions here, Victor. The system is designed so that the agent can see at any point their metrics per client. We had a great an agent that was tracking all of her stuff and went back in time to track work, and she posted on LinkedIn. She'd been working with them for like 900 days, so like 3 years. And it was crazy the amount of time that she spent. And what we're starting to realize, when you show all of these things to agents and they start doing the analysis, they ain't getting paid what they think they are. Like when you start taking time and divide it by hours and you start looking at these numbers, it gets very interesting. But this is the link to see the client app. And so we built this out so that at any point in time, the actual agent can log into their client app and see what the buyer sees. So every house that we're evaluating, this is pulled from the MLS data. So these are the homes right now that this particular buyer is looking at. We can see exactly what's been done so far. And then every step of the process is laid out as well. So these are again, same things, home requirements, client commitment contract. As they're being done, they're being checked off inside the system. So it's a very, very immersive part of the process. So I'll stop there, Victor, see if you have any questions, and I'll show you what's coming here in just a minute.
No, I think this is super great. Keep going. Just we're going to questions. So let's just keep rolling. Good job.
So the last thing I'll show you then is I'll do this prototype and then I'll show you the closing report on a PDF perspective. So this is something that we're currently in the process of moving towards. Number one is we're rolling out the sell side version of this within the next few months, maybe even less. So we're moving very quickly to give a listing agent the same type of experience, but designed around the listing, obviously. But where we're headed is what you're looking at next. This is actually already in development too. We have realized that we're sitting on a huge opportunity for brokers and agents, because when you give the client the app to download and they're following along on everything you're doing, there's nothing that's stopping us from integrating a full experience for that client. So right now in the current app, when you look at what we're doing here, you'll notice in its current state that this is just a contact link as a header for the system. But in our new version, we're turning this into a to-do list for the client, things they need to be doing at the key point in time where they're making buying decisions. So for example, we just signed a buyer rep agreement. We need to get them pre-qualified. We're going to stick the mortgage link at the top. Let's get your pre-approval started with our lender. We can pull that in right away. We can put in 1, 2, 3 different lenders into the experience. We can go here and say, I want to work with Chris, and we can literally start the financing process directly through the app experience. We can do that also by integrating it into the process. So from here, as you're moving through this is the buyer, to be clear. As the buyer's moving through this experience, we can start to pull them into the actual experience itself. We believe that we are about to crack the code on attach rate for brokers to be able to bring in their ancillary services into the experience, and or if the agents have different partners they work with, being able to build that into the experience so that they can create that attach rate inside the app. And we're going to do this with title, we're going to do it with home warranty, and we're going to do it with insurance, so that all of these partners are built into it. So by default, we'll have people that are in the app experience that are working with Rayse, but the agent and brokerage through their upgraded account can put in their own people in there. And then we'll even go as far as, we're working through this right now, fully RESPA compliant advertising rates, so that the agent and or brokerage can charge to be in this experience. We have massive interest going on right now by mortgage players and others to be integrated into this particular part of the platform. So we're going to start to really build out this experience to be fully inclusive with the client. So that's a very exciting part about what we're coming to right after the sell side experience, is building out this entire relationship into this app for the agents so that all their partners are integrated into that platform. Any questions on that?
No, it's impressive, but I want to see how many hours the average agent spends working with a buyer.
So this is an example of a closing report that you're referring to. This is a demo, so this isn't the exact, like an exact one. We have pretty tight security on what we can show, but same model. There's a bunch of different layouts for this. But what we do is we immediately at the end will create this report where it shows essentially the property that you purchased. It'll pull all of your information forward. We talk about how many houses you viewed, offers written, how many homes that you got into one perfect property. To your point, Victor, we lay out all the details. So this is going to show the purchase, how long, how many houses you toured, how many offers were written, purchase contract date versus close, list price versus purchase price, the percentage difference, any credits received, milestones accomplished, outcome activities, total hours, and total mileage. That hour number you're looking for on average is around 87 hours, but that's completely market dependent. So as you're getting more and more home showings going on, those numbers only increase for the average buyer and the buyer agent. But we lay out that data in a clear fashion for them. Again, this is just one example of what it's like to get through steps 2 and 3 and 3 and 4. We thank them and say there's this great experience. It's all captured within Rayse. And then this is the part that I like to show. Every single detail about what the agent did from the moment they met that client to the moment they closed is laid out. And that ends up being between 20 to 25 pages worth of work. And I love this part of it because you're going to show every phone call, every meeting, everything that's happened. This is where the agents, what we're hearing now is when buyers are like, I want to pay you less, the common theme is they go, what would you like me to take out of here? And that's part of the way they're pushing back. True story. That's one of the ways they're pushing
value
back.
What you receive, right?
Yeah. So like, what would you want me to take out of this experience? So what I love about that, I'm going to twist that, is agents are having confidence to not just be defensive, but they're being offensive in the sense of, sure, happy to have that discussion. This is the amount of work that it takes. What would you like me to take out of the experience? I don't want to take anything out of it. Well, I can't do all of this work at a reduced cost. So you can choose which one you want. So it's shifting the narrative for the agent to have the confidence in that process. So that's a very 10,000 foot overview of the product, but you can invite your clients in. So that's the other cool part I didn't show, but the client, the buyer and seller can invite their kids and family. So it's a collaborative experience for them. And then again, the agent can have team members and others into the platform. It's been a tremendous amount of work to get it to this state, and we're really pushing hard on national rollout right now with the product all over the US. So,
well, let's talk about a little bit about that. There was a question, Ray's product has been out for a while now. Could you talk about any adoption metrics, how many agents or clients are using it, what kind of functionality gets the most interest, and what is the track? That's many questions.
that's
If,
a
if
not
you
one, that's a lot.
if you click the Q&A button, you
Yeah.
should be able to read the same thing I'm reading. But when did you guys actually launch into production?
So we launched the beta version of the product, kind of like a V1 launch in September, and we onboarded and trained basically a couple thousand people on the product. We took the feedback from that from September through December, which was a lot. And then Christian and team basically, I mean, this is not trying to sound derogatory, but they kind of rebuilt it. And they redid the entire UI. The buyer presentation was put together. The closing report designs were updated. And then our V2 product, the one you just saw, was just launched last month. And so that has been the big product release. Our V2 is really the go-to-market product that you just witnessed. We've onboarded now about 3,000 to 4,000 people onto the program. So we have a lot of people in process. I can't give you closing metrics because really everyone has just been coming onto it. And obviously it takes, 30 to 60 days to close deals out. So those are all happening now. We're starting to get all those metrics in. Feedback overall, I think I'm getting all of these. Feedback overall has been really all over the place. You'll find this funny, I have people who don't like the idea that we're tracking them, and so they don't want to use the product. I can't help them with that and try and explain to them that we're not doing anything different than what your phone's already doing today, but there's some people that don't like that. The agents that are more techie love it. They love the idea around it. Buyers absolutely love it, but I will tell you it's generational. So we don't find older generations wanting to use the app. Baby boomers are like, yeah, I don't really care. Like they're not that techie. So we're not unaware of the fact this isn't going to be for everybody. So, you're looking at Gen Xers, Gen Y, millennials, all of them love what the product is. The most interesting piece of feedback I'll have is this. Number one thing we hear from buyers is I had no idea my agent was doing all that work. Number one thing we hear from agents is I have no idea I was doing all of that work. And then the second comment we typically get is it's very interesting to watch agents go through this. They talk about how they're realizing they're doing a lot more work than they thought they were. And then they eventually go through some sort of mental challenges on the reality that they're not making as much money as they thought they were. And then it usually ends up in always the same conversation of, I need to readjust my compensation because this doesn't make sense. Christian, you have a story of a gentleman, I think that you mentioned to me the other day that showed 37 houses or something, whatever it was.
Yeah, we have two sides of it. We have one lady who worked, as you said, for like 3 years. She worked over 1,000 days. I'm looking at the metrics right now. She traveled over 500 miles. She logged over 100 activities, and that's just the stuff that she logged. 12 homes toured, and she worked for just under 100 hours. And she's rethinking now that she has that. I mean, how are you supposed to know how much time and energy you're putting into a client when you work for them for that long? You have no idea. I can't remember what I did last week, let alone 2 years ago. So that's one side of it. The other side is, we were getting feedback from this guy. Actually had 3 clients in a row do this to him. He didn't even get into contracting. He's logging 40 plus hours just in showing after showing after showing, and then their client ghosts him. And so, the buyer's rep agreements are certainly helping, but this, you can't, and there's so many books that are written about this. Measure What Matters is one that's great. But until you know the metrics, until you understand where you're putting your time and energy, how are you supposed to make any sort of change? So just giving these agents transparency into the actual activity data is already starting to give them the ability to transform where they're putting their time, which is great to see.
Yeah, there's some interesting perspectives that I really look forward to. As a consulting firm, our opportunity for brokers is to come in and help them be more effective. So the big promise of technology is that it does a lot of the work for you. Well, I don't know that it really does. I mean, certainly the physical work isn't being done for you, but agents are far more than Uber drivers, right? But that's nevertheless, the amount of time and effort and energy hasn't really been tracked. And really until you do, it's pretty hard to sharpen up on what you want to do. Another thing that I find to be super interesting is, when we do brokerage valuations today, we look at like your transaction volume and things like that. But if I'm a buyer and I'm buying a real estate brokerage, I want to know about your future transactions, and I can certainly look at your listings, but we all know, if you've been in the real estate industry, that buyers take over 300 days to transact. From the day you get started looking for properties to when you close, it's a really strong, long cycle. So today, if I asked a real estate broker, like, how many buyers are you working with? They go, I don't know.
I have no idea.
I mean, you can look at save searches on your website or something, but you really don't know. And, there were 13 states that had buyer representation agreements before the settlement? Something
It
like
was
that.
like 17, but some version of it. But yeah,
Yeah.
close. Yeah.
And I would say from my experience, about 90% of those buyer representation agreements were signed at closing, not when they started working
Or
with the
or at
client.
or at the point where they submit an offer, but your point's the same. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
were, it was a to-do. It was not ever something that was done in advance in an organized, structured way, and there wasn't really a presentation. Buyer's agents were people that, were, I don't know, they were kind of treated like trash. Like you could just call them up and say, hey, meet me, do this, do whatever. And there was no accountability for even working with you in the future. And agents would just happily do that. So I'm really looking forward to the day that brokerages are really going to be able to sharpen up how they can save their agent time and deliver more value through technology. I'm really excited that real estate brokers will have some good data on where these buyers are in the process and who's really engaged and who's really likely to be a forecastable transaction. I'm really looking forward to understanding whether brokerages who have agents that are using Rayse in their daily business are outperforming those agents in their company that aren't.
I think that's all interesting statistics and analytics we'll have eventually as we go. The thing that you're kind of alluding to, Victor, which, we didn't really talk about, but over the course of time, we'll be able to benchmark and look at what are your top producers doing differently than your bottom 90% and give you, if you were to shift these 6 things or implement these 6 things, you might be able to see a 25 basis point lift in comp because there's a tremendous amount of insights we'll be able to provide on the workforce. No different than what Amazon does. Amazon tracks every single detail about what their driver is doing and to a finite detail to make it the most efficient operation. I'm not suggesting that, but the ability for us to be able to see what your workforce, I can ask any broker, I'm one of them. No idea what my people are doing. I have no idea what they're doing 99% of the time. And so if you were able to see these behaviors cause this kind of response, then you can train to that. And so there's a lot of interesting things coming when you are tracking workforce. I think brokers now, the faster they think about implementing systems like this, they're always worried about, well, it's my agent adoption. Well, be a leader. Start actually leading your company into its future. No offense. You need to be thinking about this stuff. Otherwise, you're constantly going to be just playing defense with all of the shift that's coming, and you're not going to be at the forefront of it. I love the fact that as this big piece we're moving into, this ability for us to finish the sell side versions. We've got a product that covers both sides, which is our big priority right now. And immediately after launching this integration for ancillaries, that is a huge opportunity for brokerages to be able to create a higher attach rate on businesses, which they're going to need that money in this new future. They're going to need to have a higher attach rate on ancillaries to maintain broker profitability. So a lot of the people that are deploying Rayse right now are doing it in these phases. Get buyer out, sell will come next. They'll get that launch, and then we'll launch ancillary after. So it's the space launch within the system. But it's exciting time. It
All
really
right,
is.
I gotta ask you the toughest question. Maybe it's not that tough, but we have seen time and time again, like where Zillow will buy a company like Loop or Showing Time, or Compass buys a disclosure company or whatever. whenever businesses, whenever a real estate broker is evaluating doing business with another real estate broker, they have to trust that you're not looking at their data. How do they trust you?
That's a great question, Victor. So, number one is there's a separate team here. Number two is everybody should understand the entire investor network is literally the industry. So it's not, this isn't me at Next Home. This is literally our investor list is MLSs, associations, Remax, EXP, Howard Hanna. They're all investors in the business. So it is and has been a collaborative business from the beginning. All of that data goes through massive security. And to be honest with you, it's something that drives me nuts because I'll ask Christian for like, hey, can I get an example of a real life closing report? Which is why I showed you a demo today. And he's like, no, that's a security thing we can't do. So it's a whole separate conversation between brothers. But the point I'm making is there's a very much separation of church and state. I'm going to follow up your question with another one you'll likely ask. And, where does this company go long term? This is and has been from the beginning a company that was not, I didn't build it for Next Home. We took industry money together, collaborated to build a product. And just so if the DOJ is listening, the product has tons of ways to do compensation. There is no standard. And the idea was always to create something that helps the industry be better, more professional, provide the consumer the ability to understand what our industry does. Everybody wins in this process. But I can tell you as a shareholder in this, along with a lot of other people, I certainly have and will influence what I can to make sure this business stays in the hands of an independent like we are today, or that this business, if it goes public long term or whatever we decide, is constantly putting the real estate community at the forefront. That's something that we've done from the beginning. That's something I've said from the beginning. It's something I've promised all the investors in the business, and it's something we're going to continue to do. I think those that know me know I'm very passionate about this industry, and I'm not interested in letting somebody harm it any further, which is why we're helping create this transparency in the process. So
Awesome. Well, we're at time. Just to wrap it up, we'll send a copy of this recording to everybody who was on the call today. And if you want to get information about investing in Rayse, or you want to sign up to get on the list to launch Rayse in your business, or get a deeper demo, ask additional questions, or find out how this could boost your business, Christian's contact information will be there, and they've got a bunch of people, great people working on
yeah,
it. Yeah.
you can just send us an email. Mine's just james@rayse.com. I usually give Christians out just so that he gets flooded with emails. But if you guys have any questions, certainly reach out. And you can join the massive list of people that are deploying it across the US. We're excited. It's a really exciting time for the business. Despite all this nonsense and all the drama going on, we actually feel like there's a very clear path forward for our industry. So
Amazing. Well, we'll check in with you guys next quarter to see how far you've progressed, but pretty impressive.
look forward
What
to
you've
it.
done. And, I know that, you guys learned pretty quickly when you went into beta that there were some changes that you need to make, and you were very
Yeah,
responsive for those changes. I know you brought in some serious horsepower on the development design side to get all that done. And yeah, obviously what I'm looking at today is much more impressive than what you showed me on day one.
totally.
It was
Yeah,
a PowerPoint presentation and an idea.
yeah.
So, yeah,
It's a very
congratulations to you
sophisticated piece of
guys.
software.
I
Thank you.
love it when you forge into an area of technology that's, nobody's done this before, nobody's seen it before. You kind of opened up a brand new category and really took transaction management to where it all, should have been. Like, transaction management's really closing management. It's not really the whole thing, So I really appreciate what you guys have done. Thanks for your time. Thanks for updating all of our friends here at Wave Group. They were able to get on the call, and good luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Christian. Yep, we'll see
All
you.
right.
Thanks.
Bye.